Kicking off its 150th anniversary, Rider has invited Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Doris Kearns Goodwin to speak right here in the SRC. We're about to go upstairs to sit down at a press conference to get to know the author a little bit more. Not only did we get a little taste of history, we also got to listen to years of research applied to life today.
You know, I think always looking at the leaders that have been successful in the past, we can learn from them. You have to believe, whether you're a leader in a small organization or a large organization, there are certain kind of common traits that successful leaders share, whether it's the ability to get through adversity, or to communicate well with the people, or to stay close to public sentiment, and just to see or bring people on their team that can criticize them and not get angry with them, and to have a certain emotional intelligence. All of those things, I think a leader can take. You got to believe leadership is not simply born, it's made. But Lincoln especially, there's something about his, I felt at least in the 10 years that I was working on it, that you could feel like you'd almost be a better person if you followed Lincoln. I mean, he just was so able to, it's not that he didn't feel the normal human emotions of envy or jealousy or anger or retaliation, but he knew that if you allowed those emotions to fester inside of you, it poisons you. So he was able to just sort of damp them down. I don't know how, and there were just times when you'd see him kind to somebody who had hurt him so much before, because it was good for him to be kind to the person then, so it was practical, but also he really was able to let the past be the past. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking this would be something for all of us to learn in human life. You have to build the people around you who can do the things you don't do, which means you have to be self-aware and self-reflective of where are my strengths. And I think the most important thing, if you're going to be a leader, is identifying that you're willing to take responsibility and you want to take it. Not everybody does, and it's perfectly fine. And so knowing that about yourself, is a good way of knowing, am I willing to take the tension of leadership in order for the satisfaction of it? And many people would prefer not to necessarily, be in a leadership role. So knowing yourself, I think, and then knowing what qualities are needed at that particular time in terms of what you're trying to lead.
Along with all the advice, we received a deeper look into the literary inner workings of her mind.
Since it's going to take me so long, I've now discovered, yeah, I have to want to be with that person every day. I could never write about Hitler or Stalin or Napoleon. If you know that you're going to wake up with them and feel enlarged in their presence, that's the most important thing. And then there's certain eras of history that I just find more interesting than other eras, and I'm going to be living back in that time. So obviously, to live in the Civil War or the turn of the 20th century or the Second World War or the 60s would be more fun, for me at least, than living in the 20s or the 50s or the 70s or something. So there's a sense of finding those periods of time when a lot was happening and people were active, a lot of citizens were active during those periods of times in reform or in participating in the society, and then you feel buoyed up by that. You have to come up with, at least I've had to come up with another angle, not just being a straight biography. And that's what takes so long a time. The thing builds, it took me a couple of years to get the Teddy Taft angle going, and a couple of years to get the out of Mary and Abe and into Lincoln and the Team of Rivals. I start with is the person and the time, and then hope after I read widely that I can figure out a story within the story, even though that makes it sound shorter than it is because it still becomes fat. That you really get to feel like you're talking with them after a while. My kids used to kid me when I was writing about Franklin and Eleanor that they would hear me sometimes in my studies saying, "Oh, Franklin, can't you be nicer to Eleanor? Eleanor, forget that he had an affair in 1918. It's over." If you're reading a letter, you feel like you're just standing on the shoulder of the person who's writing it and looking over. Or you're reading the diary entry at night. You could be sitting reading the diary. You feel like you understand what they're feeling at that moment, not just what they're saying in the day.
It really was a fun and interesting experience to sit down with such an influential woman and learn a little bit more about her work. For Rider University Network, I'm Katie Rust.